It was about a year ago we did that.
Now, yeah, we're on now. So they should be able to see it now.
We are now on Facebook. Welcome, everyone. Hi, I'm Suzanne Kingston. I'm with the New Brunswick Adoption Foundation. And tonight we're having a very special panel called Youth Perspectives on Permanency. And we brought these people together through the Youth and Care Network. Thank you, Zoe Bourgeois, who is the coordinator for that. And then we have 3 other young women who are part of their youth leadership team who are going to be talking about this. So what I'm going to do, we have questions. I did want to, just before we dive into questions, is that part of why we at New Brunswick Adoption Foundation wanted to talk about this is of the kids who are in permanent care, well over 60% are teenagers. So what we're going to talk about tonight is what was that like when you were a teenager and you were in care, and what were the permanency options for you, and was adoption part of that? So we're going to hear from these very courageous, accomplished young women, and we'll go from there. So welcome everyone out in Facebook land. So I'll just have, I'm going to go around and I'll just first ask Michaela to tell us about yourself, just a little bit about your age, what you're doing, when you went into care, some details about your life.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Michaela Duplessis. I went into care when I was 7 years old, and recently I just signed out of post-guardianship. Currently, I am a family support worker at Capital Family Services here in St. John, and I'm just living my best life.
Thank you. And Tara, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tara Peltier. I'm 29 and I live in Fredericton, New Brunswick. I entered care for the first time when I was about 8 or 9, and I left care at about 13, 14 years old.
Right.
And I'm a social worker in child protection now.
Okay. And I'll go to Amanda next.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Amanda Walker. I went into foster care when I was 7, and I'm 32 now, and I'm working for a woman who has acquired a brain injury, so I'm a caretaker for her, and yeah, that's pretty much about me.
And Zoe, who I meant to go to first, but
no worries. I like hearing the others. Yes, it's awesome.
So I'm okay. Go ahead, Zoe.
Okay, so I'm Zoe Bourgeois, and I'm the program coordinator for the New Brunswick Youth and Care Network, but I'm also a social worker as well. I entered care at 1.5, and I transitioned in and out until about 9, and then I went into a pre-adoptive home. That didn't end up working out, and then I found my forever home at 11, but was officially adopted at 15.
Right. Thank you. So one of the things, one of the ways we've structured the questions is, well, we're going to have these guys talk about what it was like being in care, then what it was like when there was talk of maybe leaving care, adoption, permanency options, and then what it was like after you left care. So Zoe, I'll go back to you just to have you start on this one. Tell us a little bit what it was like when you were in care, and what were your foster family like? What was that experience like?
Yeah, so as I stated earlier, I entered care at a very early age, so I actually don't remember a whole lot of my early years, but the first home I can remember is when I was 3, and it was a very traumatizing home for me. I learned at 3 that it was important to memorize your social worker's phone number just in case the home just wasn't working out or meeting your needs. My brother and I ended up getting abused in that home and just were treated very poorly. Mm-hmm. But then my other homes moving forward were very much not like that. They were more positive and healthy, and just were more focusing on my needs. So at 9, I met my last foster mom, who I still have in my life today. She's basically a grandmother to me, and she was the first foster home that I actually felt like not a foster child. I felt like a daughter or granddaughter more than a daughter, because she was older. Mm-hmm. And it was in her home that I was able to really find, and was
Some
a very traumatized like a daughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was the first foster home that I actually felt like not a
It's
foster
back talking to us.
traumatized. Yeah, do you hear that?
Sorry, I think
daughter.
it's my, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm like, I'm hearing myself.
No,
The
it,
first foster home
okay,
that I actually
there we go. There.
talk.
It's my Facebook. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay, back. I'm logically,
Yeah, so yeah, it was in her home that I was able to find a lot of permanency and stability, and it was in that home that I found my voice to ask to be adopted.
nice, lovely. Okay, so Amanda, what was your experience like while you were in care?
Yeah, so like I said, I went into care when I was 7. I also had a brother with me. So when I first got into care, my first experience was an emergency foster home. I was removed from my mother's hotel room in the middle of the night and sat in a police station. And I remember actually that stark moment of the difference between being in my mother's environment to like not, it just became like so quiet and just, I don't know, weird anyway. And it was kind of confusing. It was really weird. And, you know, you're kind of just a kid trying to be a kid.
Oh, I think we've got some freezing going there. So we'll have, okay, so Tara, how about you? What was your foster care experience like?
You want me to go?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think they're freezing up there. We're having a lot of techie issues, sorry.
For me, yeah, my first time entering care, I was about 8 or 9.
This experience was emergent.
Oh. I think they're freezing.
Can you hear me
Oh,
okay?
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I actually was in a hospital for a few months. Like I was kind of just waiting in a hospital for a foster home. And that was a weird experience, although it was much better where I was. So I was having a great time because I was being taken care of. And then I went into my first foster home and it was
How old were
fine.
you?
I was about 8 or 9. I honestly can't remember.
Right.
It's fuzzy because I was in and out so like different times. But I had a good experience, and I then lived with my aunt for a transition period to go back home. And that was great because it was my aunt. And I then entered care again a few years later. I don't remember, don't ask me what age. And that foster mother was one of my favorites, and we still connect today.
No.
And the final time that I was in care, it was my decision to leave the home that I was in, my home, sorry, not the foster home. I ran away and asked for help, and I requested to go to this specific foster home because I knew what it would be like, and I knew what to expect, and I knew that it would feel like home. And
So
then
you chose the foster, like you said.
Yeah, I asked, I said, can you call her right now, and can I go back there? I don't want to go anywhere else. And thankfully she took me in. And then I was in care for a year or so, up until, until I was out of care. But my sister was also in care, but we were never in the same home. So that was a little bit difficult. So I think that was probably the one part that was difficult, was not having my sister with me. But overall, my time in care was good for me because it was better than where I was.
Right, right. So you saw foster care as a really safe, warm place.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Michaela, what was it like for you?
It was a love-hate relationship. Yeah. I was grateful to be taken away from the situation that was very toxic and damaging. But in the same sense, I really did not enjoy the non-consistency with it from going home to home. So I went in when I was 7. And I went from home to home. In grade 3, I went to like 8 different schools. It was just a really traumatizing period. Then I bounced with a family, and there was an agreement set in stone, guardianship. I went into guardianship, and it all faltered. And then I went back with several different homes until I moved out onto my own. So it was like a love-hate relationship. I loved it because I was being taken away from scary situations, but I hated it because it removed me from that family needs that I needed.
Right. And you talked about too, when you talked to you earlier about that sense of you don't want to be labeled a foster.
Yeah, you don't want to be
You didn't- you
stigmatized.
thought-
I hated that. Yeah, I oftentimes would, with friends, I would be going to occasions and I would say every foster parent was my parents because I needed that sense of belonging to be like other children with families.
Right. Right. So Zoe and Amanda, I see you're back. You
Yeah,
have some internet issues there.
yes, the
And you readjusted your position, which is fine. It seems much sharper. I think we went through this question with you guys, so I think it kind of worked out timing wise. Okay, so the other, when you think about while you were in care, who were the people that really helped you? Like I'm sort of adding a question to this question. So when you think about who were those people that really made a difference for you, that were helpful? Okay, Michaela, how about we'll start with you.
I had some people that fought for me, that believed in me academically. I had teachers that really fought for me as I was struggling, bouncing from home to home. I hated school. I hated everything about it. I had teachers, in my corner cheering me on. I had some good social workers, that would pick up the phone if I ever needed anything. There's some foster families that I thoroughly enjoy. I have a few contacts with a couple of families. I call them my grandparents, and there's one that I call my sister, and her kids are my nieces and nephews, and then people that look out for me. I had someone, her name's Shelly. She used to drive me back and forth from dance and was just cheering me on and would go to my shows when no one else would go to my shows. Yeah, so
Yeah.
she kind of took on the mother role I needed.
Right. And so Tara, you talked about that foster parent that really was your rock.
Yeah. No, for sure. I can remember till this day the final time that I went back into care. I was sitting on her lap and I was probably 13, or I don't remember how age I was, and she was just stroking my hair and ran me a bath. And that's what I needed, and that will be a memory that I'll always have. So thankful for her, and she just made me part of the family. I didn't feel like a foster child, although I threw that in her face a lot of times, because of the trauma I was going through. But I never felt like that. I felt like I finally had a home, and I was finally able to be just a kid. And yeah, so I had a good experience, and I had great social workers. I remember one in particular that she would bring me in her convertible and put the top down. We would just listen to Celine Dion and drive around. So, little things like that you remember that made a big difference.
Yeah. So Amanda, who really helped you in that process?
Yeah, so I definitely had a good social worker. I had two social workers. The first one not so much, but the second one, he was there for a really long time. Yeah, and he had those little connections like Tara mentioned. Like he would send me postcards of him traveling and encourage that in me, and tell me about him biking from Toronto to Wasaga Beach, and just sending me notebooks and stuff and congratulation cards when I got into school. So yeah, that was there. But I was lucky enough when I was 10 to be put into a home for 5 years, and for me that was the most permanency that I had ever had. And when I went into that family, I felt finally part of something. And to this day, I still refer to them as my mom and dad, and I still have connection with that family. And it's evolved and changed and has to have come into what it is over the years to what it is now. But she's always been my rock, and definitely showed me what family and love and what that feels like. Because yeah, it was a completely different experience. And I find too, I had teachers that were really supportive for me. When I started to go to counseling, those people became also really supportive for me during those, transitions and tough stuff that I had to go through while I was in care. So
yeah. And so your experience, and then just when you think of other youth, in terms of the stuff that went well, the stuff that was positive, obviously your last foster family.
I think it's people that can really just bring and highlight those strengths that you've just never knew about or knew existed within yourself. I think those are the people that really can bring a different life into you and start to like actually create impact, that you do have a lot to offer, that your experiences are opportunities and you can do something with your life. I know my adopted mom was my main advocate for that. Like, she was always very focused on trying to see what I did well and what I could offer and how I could better my life in all areas.
Yeah.
And same with my social workers. You know, I had a few great ones where they did focus on the best interests and advocated on my behalf when I asked to be adopted. You know, they didn't discourage that. They supported it and made it happen. When I asked for everything in my family, they supported that and found that for me. So
Yeah.
I think good supportive people in your circle can do wonders for your well-being.
So yeah, so talk a little bit about your, we talked a little bit about what people's experience was like while they were in care and who helped them and what worked well. And then in terms of the permanency planning part, so Zoe, talk about what your journey was when you were, a little girl, and then you did get an adoption plan.
Yeah, so my birth mom gave birth to my youngest brother, who was immediately placed for adoption. And that was the first time I ever heard the word adoption. It was never talked about beforehand. So I asked my social worker, like, what is adoption? Like, what's going to happen to him? And so she explained to me that he's going to go to a family and he wouldn't be living in foster care and he wouldn't be living with my mom. And so I looked at that as an opportunity, and I was really kind of envious that he got to escape everything that my brother and I went through, my older brother. And so I asked if I could be adopted too. And I was 9 at this time. So I knew at that time, at that young of an age, that my mom wasn't in the right state to meet my needs, and that liquor was probably always going to be her number one priority. So and again, in that my last foster home, she created such a healthy environment that I craved, and I just wanted to stay there and have more of that. So yeah, I was thankful to find my forever mom at 11 after a failed adoption. And I can tell you, it was with her commitment and patience and understanding of my trauma and all that I've came through, and even her advocacy for everything that she's done for me, I wouldn't be where I am today. She proved to me at time after time through testing and all those, after those honeymoon phases of really just getting to know one another and me testing and telling her off and finding that Achilles heel. She just proved to me that she was always going to be in my corner, that she wanted to be my mom.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tara, what was your journey like when you left care? What happened? You were in this foster home where, this lovely family that treated you like you're a part of the family, and then?
Yeah, I mean, my experience is a little bit different because, I went through all of this trauma, and I'm still very young, so I'm not really understanding it. But I'm with this family where I feel part of the family, and I'm living a normal life. So then we're at this point where I was in care for a year. I don't know, it all seems like it all matches together after a while, but then the conversation was, you can't just stay in care. You have a mother who's in Ontario that wants to have custody of you and your sister, or you get adopted by your foster mother, but you have a mother, you have a family member coming, stepping forward. So, I mean, I was like, okay, I didn't really know her. So it was nerve-wracking, and I'm moving from New Brunswick to Ontario as a child, and all those feelings, but I did have my sister, thank goodness. So that made it a little bit easier. But I guess that was my permanency, although it didn't feel like it because I had to start all over.
Right.
Get used to this whole new territory, this new family, while still trying to process what I just went through for X amount of years. And I didn't have follow-up. I didn't have, any social workers following me after I transitioned out. It was just kind of like, good luck.
Yes.
So,
yeah. And Michaela, what was your permanency plan opportunities or discussions?
There was lots of discussions. It almost felt like it was like, what do they want to do with me? So when I had moved from a foster care home into family, I lived with family for about 5 years. That was supposed to be the permanency plan in place, was that I was going to have this family. Adoption came up in conversation. Was discouraged. It came up in conversation, but it was discouraged. The family wouldn't have provided the right, education needs or health needs, health benefit needs. And they essentially put the thought in my head that they wouldn't have met my needs. So that was my permanency for only a short amount of time.
So that family, you lived with them,
Yeah.
but they weren't, there was the discussion of having them formally adopt you was shut down. Even though they wanted to keep you, they felt that was the best place for you to be.
It was the normal. So permanency to me means family. And, that was my family. They're a part of my biological family. So it would have been nice to have been, that had been the situation. Unfortunately, it wasn't. The home did break down a couple of years later. So, yeah.
So when the discussion of adoption happened, like what, we had talked earlier about the idea of post-secondary education as being
it was kind of one of those decisions, like her education is more important than having a family. And that's what it came across as a 10-year-old. A 10-year-old should not be having to worry about post-secondary versus having a forever family. Yeah.
Right. And so Amanda, for you, what was your was adoption talked about?
Yeah, so like when I was living with like my permanent family there for 5 years, as I became a teenager, things actually began to get really tough for me and my brother. He was working through his trauma too that he had experienced from like our birth family, and at that time, I don't think anyone in the household knew what to do with it, what to do with us. And unfortunately, my brother and I were separated because, that was the choices that my caregivers made. And then, I guess the trauma that I was experiencing, I didn't know how to deal with it, and no one knew how to deal with it. And I ended up just running away. I became a runner. Before I started running away, actually, my family moved me to a different foster home. They pulled me out of 8th grade, and I went and lived with someone else and graduated high school with people that I didn't know. And when I went into grade 9, that's when I started to run away and make those adult decisions, I guess, that you think you should be making when you're 14 and 15 years old. So unfortunately, sorry, Sue.
So your actual process of leaving care was
it was a lot different. And while I was in care, 10, 11, 12, 13, there was no discussion about what my options were or even adoption. I don't even know if I knew what adoption was. I was always just a foster kid because I was a Crown ward when I went in. So that was just my fate, I suppose. So the adoption, I just didn't know about it. There was no discussion about it. So
so we're talking about like the planning of what could have happened or what didn't happen, or how things. So how did you actually leave care? I'll go through around with each of you. And so maybe Amanda, because it'll just lead into the story you're just telling.
Sure.
So what happened next?
Yeah, I left care on my own. I ran away from home and I never went back. When I finally made contact with my social worker, again, like everyone supported me and did their most to make sure that I was safe. Because I was a Crown ward of the CAS, I had the option when I turned 18, my social worker said that I could sign on for extended care. For me, all that I heard with extended care was a paycheck. That's it. All I knew was that was money for me. And so since then, and then at 21, I guess the extended care checks stopped. But by then, thankfully, I had found my place. I went to university and I had accomplished a lot, because in my journey, when I decided that I was going to take my life into my own hands, you know, I got wrapped up in drugs and I got on a really dark and dangerous path. So when I reached out to my support, my social worker was the first person that I really connected with. And I got back in touch with my foster family. It shows you how important family is, because
Yeah.
their right back in my life made me realize something about me. And so it sparked that, like, changing my life around. So I went to university. And so when the extended care ended, I was already in an institution that was supporting me. I went to school, I got a student loan, that money was coming in. And, so that was kind of how I aged out of care.
Yeah.
I guess it was just the extended care program that was just like a paycheck for me. I've kind of had to figure it out as I go.
Right. But nothing, no consistent person other than people you could reach out to. Or, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, cool. What about you, Tara? Leaving care, you moved with your mom, your birth mother. So what kind of support was there for you through that process?
Um,
And what could have made it easier?
yeah, I didn't have any support from like where like the say like social development from what it is here in New Brunswick. Even when I transitioned there, it's not like I was followed up by anyone to make sure I was doing okay and whatnot. I mean, I had family connections, like I was able to rebuild, my family relationships that I had lost for so long while I was going through the trauma I was going through. So that was great, just connecting with those family members and trying to reconnect with my mom, getting to know her.
And what could have made it easier, that process?
I just think I don't blame my mom at all, because she didn't know what she was really getting into. Me and my sister were brought to her with all of this trauma and all this baggage, and she didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. My sister didn't know what to do. So first, I think it would have helped if there was some kind of transition period on how, this is, I mean, there's no guidebook, but kind of like the things on what to expect and how to help, or here are the resources. I didn't know any of that. And I didn't, seek anything up until I did it myself when I went to university and started to become more aware of my mental health and my trauma. But I think more awareness and more discussions, even though just because I went and transitioned with my bio mom doesn't mean everything goes away.
Yeah.
So I think that would
be your journeys.
Yeah, that doesn't just disappear.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And Michaela, for you tell us about you leaving care.
Yeah. So I went back and forth with different foster families. At the age of 18, I decided I was totally done with that. I moved out on my own with my now fiance and created my own life. However, I still was through post guardianship. So at age 18, I left, kind of the foster system, but still was actively involved with the government, social development. And then anyways, I was like, okay, since I've been thinking about post-secondary since 10 years old, I knew that I was going to go to school in order to keep, the funds and everything coming. While I lived on my own, I kind of depended on that kind of support. And anyways, I eventually cracked. My mental health was deteriorating. I didn't have the proper resources to carry on with with post-secondary.
Right.
So because my mental health was rocky all over the place, I've started to fail university. I went from having great marks when I first went in, and then just dropped the marks when I hit 18, because I was on my own. I had financial burdens. I was going to school, working full time, had severe mental health, was just struggling to get by. And I was on the brink of, getting kicked out of university or going on academic probation, that the department had said, you got to pull your socks up or we're going to pull funding, which was really eye-opening, because, it's a great opportunity for
Yeah.
kids to have, but I needed way more than just funding and education. I needed a family. So I created my own. And then I knew I was failing. So I knew that they were going to pull everything. So I just took it into my own matters and said, no, I'm going to decide my own fate. So I texted my social worker and I was like, I'm done. I need a meeting. And I signed myself out. So I left on my own terms.
Right. And you're going to just manage yourself and you're.
And I have been managing, although what I wish would have been better would have been if I had the proper like training on how to deal with finances and how to be an adult. I didn't get any of that consistency. So I kind of am winging it.
And so for people that are watching this that maybe aren't sort of inside the system, there's something called post-guardianship. So if you're studying some kind of post-secondary program, if you stay in foster care, you can have access to funding for education, rent, and basically you're financially supported through your post-secondary program, which is wonderful. The problem though is that if you don't do well, you completely lose funding. So you not only just fail a course, you also don't get rent money.
And that's a lot of pressure.
Yes. And then the other thing is that for when you're younger and considering being adopted, that if you get adopted, you don't get post-secondary support. So people opt to keep this post-secondary support and not get adopted because they'll stay in care and get the support. But if they get adopted, they don't get the support. But then the program can get complicated.
Still not working, Mama.
Yes. You having trouble connecting there, Zoe? Okay, there you are.
My internet just completely went on me and now I don't have any, so I'm using all my data, but it's worth it.
Oh, okay. And we I don't know how much. Yeah. Anyway, so okay, Zoe, your experience was you were adopted. So happy, perfect story, right? So tell us about that journey. And obviously, I mean, it's absolutely wonderful, to have adoption as an option. But what could have helped in that process, or how did it go? And maybe tell us a little bit about that route.
Yeah, so I think I was landed in the perfect arms for what I was kind of experienced with, because my mama was really just patient, understanding, and she doesn't think she was, but she very much was trauma informed in her ways, so she would, for an example, like I would often tell her, I wouldn't often tell her, but I told her, you're ruining my life, and so as like a young child who's 12, 13 years old, I just came at her and she was like, well, I've only known you for a few months, like give me some time and let me see what I would do, and then she stopped and thought about it for a minute. She's like, no, you're right. I thought I didn't work in government. I worked in government for 35 years and I didn't ruin enough people's lives working there that I thought it would be a great idea to call social development to see if there was a little girl I could ruin their life. And they gave me you. And so in that moment, I could have easily been, she could have easily been like, what do you mean I'm ruining your life? I'm doing the best I can for you. I'm bringing you in. But instead, she diffused it with humor, and I think a lot of times our trauma responses can be so, like, they can come off like a personal attack, but like mama just found a way to be creative and just always, I'm bringing you in, but and like be always humor, she was always wanting to be funny and just try and like lay it out for me in a way that can really just understand. But one thing also is, I mentioned it before, is she didn't look at me like a broken child. She looked at me like a child who just lacked a lot of guidance and support and mentorship. And she was there to pick up those missing pieces that really just helped shape me into the person that I am today. So she's always been great that way. And she still does it to this day. There are moments where I question my abilities and question myself, and she just brings me back to reality. And I think that's the thing with adoption too, is like, it just never ends. Like the relationship is always going to take work.
Yeah.
And even though I'm 29 years old, I have 2 kids and I'm still living with her. She's never closed her doors on me. She's always welcoming me and just, again, proving to me every day that she's in my corner and supporting me.
So your mom, why, how do you think she knew what to do? Like when you think of other adoptive parents and, if their kids are, have gone to, all of them have pretty much gone through significant trauma. Like what is it that your mother had that you think all adoptive parents need?
A voice. She had a very strong voice and was
Yeah.
not scared to advocate for her needs.
Right.
Not only for my needs, but for her own needs, like when she felt like the system wasn't hearing her or listening to her, she wasn't afraid to speak up. So for an example, there was a time where I ran away and I was put into the crisis unit, and she went to my psychologist's house at 8 o'clock at night and like banged on the door and basically demanded her to like help her until they came up with a plan on how to get me back. I think it's those moments, those pivotal moments that show like she's really in it and she's not just doing it because she wants like the paycheck or like just like this. I don't know, some foster parents are in it for the right reasons, or even adoptive parents, but Mama was in it because again, she was adopted too. So she also had that perspective of what it was like. And yeah, I just think she wasn't scared of the system. And her main focus was what was in the best interest of Zoe, AKA me, right? She always stuck with that. And if the system wasn't aligning with that, she was very quick to keep them accountable.
Right.
And my mom was also like very like smart in her ways. Like, how sometimes they have like hidden little programs in the system that you don't know about. Well, my mom would find those and then she would advocate on my behalf to get those programs, so she was creative in that way too. Strong voice goes a long way.
So I will just give a little plug here, because when your mom adopted, we didn't have our adoption support network, which we now do. So we have hundreds of families who have adopted and people waiting to adopt and post-adoption who can connect with each other, connect with our staff who are adoptive parents, but then also, ways to find out about, okay, what supports are available, and also, help process with another parent. I mean, I think your mother's pretty special in that she had that, she's a special person, but then she knew what it felt like to be a kid in foster care and get adopted. Like she could relate to your experience so personally, right?
Yeah. And I think it helped, like, she was a single person too. Like, I didn't have any other kids in the home. Like, it was just me and her. So, like, I had all of her attention.
Right. Yeah. So sometimes everybody thinks, oh, the perfect adoptive family is this 2-parent family and, suburban or whatever. And, that's not always the case.
Yeah. Whenever I go to Pride and I see a single parent in the crowd, I'm like, yes.
Okay, so when you think about permanency, this is a question for everybody. Like, why do you think it's so important? Or another way of looking at the question is like, what does family mean?
Yeah, that's a
So
big question.
maybe Amanda, why don't you start with that one?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because in my experience, like I really have had to like develop my own understanding of what family is. It's something that I've had to create, and it's been really hard, because a lot of times I've felt really alone, and it's hard to rely on strangers. So I've had to rely on my friends, and even now in my 30s, like I just learned this, it's like, I wish that I had known that before about how important having people support you is.
Yeah.
Like, and having people see your strengths, because when you're traumatized and like, you experience all that, like we carry that for our whole lives. Yeah. And like the only voice we hear is ourselves. So if we have all this like tough stuff, like, it's hard to find ourselves. And so we need family to be there, because I always tell myself, my friends are a reflection of me, because when I get lost in my own trauma head, I take a look around me and see who I've placed there, so that it reminds me of who I am. Because they're all little pieces of me. So, like it's been And like I just got back to New Brunswick, and really this year I've really been focusing on building those relationships that I already have, because they're so friggin' important. Like, yeah, so yeah.
Now
And my
I'm
dog, I have a little dog, so he's my family too.
And I'm going to plug, I just plugged for the Adoption Support Network. This Youth and Care Network is part of how you guys, you know, who didn't end up getting a family through the process, right? You create support, you create really healthy friendships of people who are trying to do so much to make their lives as happy and healthy as possible. So
Yeah, and who understand, right? Like,
yeah,
it's
because
like,
it's just unique.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tara, for you, what's family?
On going off of what Amanda said, like that rings true, because although when I left care, I was with my mother and my stepfather and my sister, one big happy family. Like, it wasn't, you know, I ran so many times. I lived on my own. I came back. I was just lost. I was looking for that permanency where I was accepted for what I was going through. And it wasn't like I was, you know, getting grounded for running away. It was more so like, what is going on, and trying to understand, you know, being trauma informed. You know, there wasn't like a light to what I went through. It was more so like, we're gonna put that under the rug and we're gonna talk about it. So now I'm 29, I realized, like, throughout the years of, you know, just everything I went through and how I've struggled, like, it is the people that you place around you, and boundaries are so important. Even with like your biological family, like if it's just not right and they're not, you know, filling your cup, or they're not understanding you, or it's not fitting your needs, you just have to have those boundaries in place. And you know, for me, my permanency, where I feel like I'm at peace and where I belong, where I'm accepted, is my partner. We've been together for 7 years now, and he cries with me, he holds me, he understands, you know, like, he doesn't, there's no like judgment, there's no like, like, can we just not do this right now? It's like, just be you and like do you or whatever. And I feel like he's right beside me. And same with like a lot of my really best friends that I have, and my sister. It's just like, it's talked about. It's not like I'm not in the shadows anymore. It's like, what you're going through, let's talk about it. And
Right.
that's like, it's a really good feeling when you can just be you, and you can just cry, and you can sob, or you can, you know, have bad days. Like, yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And Michaela, what's family for you, and permanency, and, you know, how does it work out for you?
I have come to the conclusion that your family is who you want to choose to be your family. I would go back and forth with like trying to connect with my mom, and it just, those boundaries are super, super important, right? And it's like, as a youth in care, you're just looking for support and love. And I found my family, and they will always be my family. The consistency, I really needed consistency.
Yeah. And I just want to say, you know, I've known Zoe for a long time, but you know, your other panelists, I've just gotten to know just in the last few days as we prepared for this. And I'm so impressed with, you've had this journey that has been, you've had obstacles in your way, you've had challenges that no, you know, other kids who are in families and didn't have to go through this horrible journey that you guys had to go through, but you've like come out the other side, and you're just like, I'm blown away by how self-aware you are, and how, you know, talking about boundaries. Like when I was 29 or in my 20s, I didn't even know what that meant. Like I didn't understand any of that, but I had this safety net around me, right? That kept me somewhat safe. Where you guys have had to learn things in such hard ways, but your wisdom and, you know, healthy way in which you understand things is, you know, and you're all doing well. You're all, you know, but you're beating the odds. And it doesn't, I guess too, you know, we talked about what one of the messages we want to come out of this is, we want to show the strength of you guys, of this youth that have been in care, and look what you've done, and look at how well you've managed. But it shouldn't be this hard. We shouldn't, you know, we need to help youth throughout this whole process so they have healthy relationships and they're not alone and they don't have to create everything themselves. They have a safe place to land. So those are my thoughts. So what do you, those are my questions. So what else do you guys have any final thoughts that you want to let the audience know about? I can check comments too.
This is like a big family right here, like the Youth and Care Network. Like I told Zoe, I was like, where have you been my whole life? Like
Yes.
this is a family.
And you feel
I
more,
love that.
you feel like, okay, someone finally gets me. Like,
Right. And it's a safe place to be vulnerable. And I think a lot of kids in care can't open themselves up to be vulnerable. Same with kids that have been adopted, you know, they struggle with, you know, identity issues as well.
yeah, like
Yeah.
emotions are not something that it's like, let's talk about our emotions. Let's talk
Right.
about your trauma. Like
Right.
people don't want to talk about that. Like, you know, they just want to, oh, you're on the right path now. You're with a family or you're in your university. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But, you know, no one wants to talk about what's really going on underneath, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
And
love hearing that because I'm getting a little emotional, but it's because I care so much. And like, if I can just find any way to interconnect y'all and just help you find your voice and then give you the platform to be able to use it and make effective changes, because that's how this stuff gets better, right? It's us folks advocating and constantly bringing it to the table and keeping it there and not backing down. And I know the wheels of government work slow, but from the time the network's been created in 2010 to now, like you can see the impact we've had and you can see all the leaders coming into your own and just the power of youth voice. I mean, we now have opportunities to even be able to be on these panels and have these type of conversations. And we can have conversations in big legislative rooms, you know, with powerful people that have such powerful decisions over our lives and talk about what's working and what isn't working. You know, I think that's also a thing that we can really celebrate, that we are on the right track. We have a long ways to go, but it's folks like you that really help bridge that gap and keep the issues at the main forefront.
yeah. And thank you. I want to say too, just as in closing, like, I just want to thank you for sharing your stories, because it is vulnerable and you're living life, but you're also sharing some really private elements of what's happened in your life. So thank you for that. And I know that you're doing it because you care about all those other kids that are still in care. You know, it's a very much you want to make the system better for everyone. And you know, there's no, like, every process needs support. If you're returning to your birth family, you know, Tara's story, there needs to be support in making that happen in a way that's healthy and okay for kids. And if you're being adopted, you need to make sure there's a support so that that process works well. And then if you're you know, aging out of care, what happens? It can't just be cut off. There's got to be a process. So how youth move through the system has to be supported in lots of different ways. And ideally, well, not ideally, there has to be relationships at the basis of it, and that those relationships are there. And it can't just be up to a young person who's been through trauma to create all the relationships in their life. We need to help youth do that. Anyway, okay, so I think any final thoughts before we sign off? There's on Facebook, there's been amazing comments. I've been able to see some of them, and everyone's saying great stuff. Thinks you guys are doing some wonderful things. So thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you for giving us this platform to be able to discuss these important conversations. They are something that needs to be discussed, and the whole general public needs to have a better understanding too.
Yes,
It's a really
right.
good
Yeah,
platform.
I know, like, in terms of our mission of making sure kids end up, you know, having permanency in their lives, that it's through the youth voice that things really change. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is important and needs to be remembered is the voice of the youth. Like, you know, we forget a lot about that. Like, no matter the age, you know, like ask that youth like how they're feeling or what they want or what would make them feel more comfortable, or what would, you know, help them in the process. Like, just in whether it's, you know, foster care, adoption, whatever it is, like just ask them what what can make the process easier for them, you know, having a welcoming space and open discussions, and, you know, even if they're saying I hate you, like you're just in it for the money, whatever, just like really what's going on underneath there. Like,
Yes. Yeah, they're saying something.
yeah.
There's a message inside that. Yeah. Yeah.
Always.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. We
Okay, so-
we're not just gonna outright say like, please love me. It's more so like,
Yeah.
I hate you, get away from me.
Yeah, it's more complicated. Yeah, they can never say exactly what they mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to sign off Facebook. Thank you. And thanks for all the commenters and watchers. We appreciate this.
Yes, thank you.